I'm Hugh. Good morning to you on this Friday. Big weekend ahead, and not because of whatever Congress is doing. Very few people care about that, actually, and I'll explain that in a second. Big weekend is in the shoe tomorrow night. The Ohio State University Buckeyes should demolish the Tennessee Volunteers. That's really what matters this weekend. But I know some of you are waking up to headlines about the government closing down. I want to remind everyone, a government close down will not affect you. Doesn't affect your Social Security, doesn't affect your Medicare, doesn't affect a lot. What do I think the Republicans ought to do after, to refresh, in case you've been in a cave for 48 hours, the Republicans negotiated with Democrats because we don't have the Senate yet. Senate belongs to Schumer. So the four leaders negotiated for a couple of weeks. They came up with a 1,500-page bill that got promptly rejected by everyone. Nobody liked it. It just had too many idiotic things in it. Because Democrats were using their last bite at the apple. And they wanted some crazy stuff. And Mike Johnson's just trying to get to the end of the year, to January 3rd. So that was rejected. And Donald Trump didn't like it. Elon Musk didn't like it. Nobody liked it. And, of course, Congress being Congress, they waited to the end. So there's no money come tonight at midnight. The existing federal funding ends tonight at midnight. So last night, the GOP brought a so-called skinny CR to the floor, but it wasn't skinny enough for 38 Republicans or all but 2 Democrats. So it failed miserably. It would have required 2/3 to pass anyway. So now what happens? Government shuts down tonight at midnight. I don't get worried about government shutdowns, provided that we pay the military. You can't ask your E1s and 2s, 3s, and 4s to skip a couple of paychecks. It doesn't work that way. Your captains and your colonels and your general officers, the admirals and the generals, they can kind of figure it out. They ought to be in a position to make it without a paycheck. But generally, you should pay the military. They signed up. They signed a contract. Nobody else signed a contract with you. They go wherever you send them, and their families stay behind when they're deployed, and we ought always to pay the people in uniform. End of story. It's a volunteer army, but once you're in, you don't get to leave whenever you want. So if you're under contract to the United States to serve them, and you can't leave and you can't quit, you should get paid. So, Speaker Johnson, if you're listening to this, put a bare bones CR on the floor that says, we're going to pay the military no matter what. And here's how much that costs. Everything else, no. We're not doing anything else. We're done. No more Mystery Science Theater 3000. If any of you remember Mystery Science Theater 3000, I'll let Dwayne explain it in just a second. It was just rewatching an old movie with 3 funny guys, a robot. I can't quite remember what the shtick was, but it was pretty funny. The guy who ran it used to come on the show, and I can't remember it much, but Dwayne will remember. But my point is, just go home. All right, pay the military and go home. And what happens is the federal government, quote, shuts down. That doesn't mean that essential services stop. They don't. The TSA still shows up at the airports to make sure terrorists aren't bringing bombs onto planes. The FBI is still going to arrest the criminal, although there are a lot of non-essential FBI employees. Every essential federal employee goes to work. They just don't get paid. They eventually get paid. I want you to, we're not idiots. We've done this before, but the Schumer shutdown, I say it is the Schumer shutdown, because Schumer's in charge of the Senate and he wouldn't move any of the appropriation bill in regular order. And so it's Schumer's shutdown. We're only doing this because Democrats are running the Senate. So just shut it down until January 3rd. And after Christmas, Mike Johnson, Steve Scalise, Tom Emmer, and then grab the whole Freedom Caucus, the knuckleheads. Good will be gone, thank goodness, so we don't have to worry about him. Gates is already gone. But we got some knuckleheads who I don't know what they want. And then we got some smart guys like Chip Roy, who the president's mad at right now. Get them all down to Mar-a-Lago, put them all up at the same hotel, and start negotiating the CR that you will pass on January 3rd or 4th when the new Congress gets here. That will be a short-term CR, and the budget and the reconciliation. In other words, demonstrate competence on January 3rd. And you won't get to go to the Smithsonian during your winter break. And we don't have to do stupid stuff like close off the parking area to Mount Rushmore. That's what Obama did during the first shutdown in 2009. I can't remember. The longest shutdown has been 35 days. So we're going to tie the longest shutdown. And you won't even notice it. Most of you will not notice it. It will be wildly inconvenient for federal employees to skip a paycheck if they end up skipping a paycheck. Very, very inconvenient. But they can always quit. That's the difference between the military and a federal civilian employee. If they're mad about this, when you sign up for the federal government, you sign up for shutdowns. It's just the way it is. It's like snow days are the good part, and the federal calendar is the good part, and the bad part is occasionally they tell you to go to work and they don't pay you. Like every few years this happens. It's not the end of the world. What matters, though, a lot, more than anything else, is that the GOP come out of the box on January 3rd when they have the Senate. This is the Schumer shutdown. No Democrat. Two Democrats voted for the bill last night, but they needed 100. 38 Republicans wouldn't vote for it, and for a variety of reasons. I don't care. It's really not a big story. It's the kind of story that leads Christmas season newscasts because there's nothing else going on in the world. There is something else going on in the world that's very important. Turns out the Pentagon's been lying to us for a few years, and we have 2,000 troops in Turkey, not 900. That's bad. Turns out Joe Biden is still out there mumbling. Syria, I mean, not Turkey. Joe Biden gave an interview yesterday, and he mumbled through it. And I don't know who's running the country. This is really kind of scary. But we got to get to January 21st. And more importantly, we got to get to January 3rd. Now, Republicans will have a 4-vote margin on January 3rd. Matt Gaetz quit. The chief knucklehead isn't there, so that's good. So they got between now and January 2nd to figure out what they pass on their first day and a budget, and whether they're going with one reconciliation package or two. One budget or two budgets. And they got to pass that on the second day. Then they're going to lose Elise Stefanik to the UN and Michael Waltz to the White House, where he's going to be the National Security Advisor. And they'll be down to a 2-vote margin until the special elections are held in Florida for Gaetz and Waltz's seat and in New York for Stefanik's seat. So they really got to get everyone to buy in. And don't do this with any Democrats. Democrats are not so dumb that they would vote against a CR that pays the military. They're pretty dumb. They are stuck on stupid in the memorable words of General Honoré. But they are not so dumb as to say don't pay the military. So I hope that makes sense to you. This is not a crisis. This is not the end of times. This isn't even an unusual story. This is a dog bites man story. A grumpy, disorganized, leaderless Democratic Party has no opinions and can't make a coherent statement about anything. And they're mad because they didn't win. And they're going to get thrown out of the Senate, the big offices. They got to lose all the big offices, and the new senators come in. And then Vance is going to preside over the Senate. But what we really now is a negotiated agreement on what the Republicans are going to do on January 3rd. I'm tired of this. They can all go home. So, Generalissimo, who did Mystery Science Theater?
That was Joel Hodgson and Mike Nelson.
Mike Nelson used to come on the show. That's right.
Yeah.
Mike Nelson. And so when I say Mystery Science Theater, their whole shtick was they would watch old movies and just chatter, and it was funny. Right. And watching the house was kind of funny.
Right. It was like three people sitting in the gallery, and you were watching the back of their heads as they were sitting in a movie theater watching.
And that's what we've been doing with the 25 Congress.
Years. Yes.
And I'm bored with it. I'm bored with this Congress being dysfunctional. And the Schumer shutdown, great. If you're mad at the shutdown, that's because of the Senate.